iNaturalist is a powerful community tool for naturalists. It allows you to share your observations of organisms from all around the world. It is a powerful research tool, and you can identify other people's observations on it as well. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use iNaturalist. First of all, you're going to need an account. So sign up for one with your email, username, and password if you don't have one already. Otherwise, log in with your email and password. Once you're logged in, you're going to come to a home screen. Now, first we're going to go over this bar at the top. This iNaturalist logo in the upper left corner will always take you back to this home screen. Next up is the search bar, which is where you can search for people, taxa, and projects. Basically everything you would ever need to search for. Next up is the Explore tab. Now in this tab it'll show you all the observations grouped by number, species, identifiers, and observers. You can see it in a map view, grid view, or list view. You can filter by taxa, location, or any of the other filters in this box. Next up is your observations. This is the same page as last time, just it's only your observations. Next up is the Community tab. The Community tab just has people, projects, journal posts, and forum. The forum I'll be covering in a different episode, but I'm going to cover projects right now. Projects are basically a pool of observations that are categorized either by taxa or location or date. A BioBlitz is a challenge to observe as many species or taxa as you can in a given area during a certain time period. Next up is Identify. Identify is where you can identify other people's observations. Again, filter by species, place, or any of these other filters. For example, if I wanted to identify this observation here of yellow-rumped warbler, and I agreed with the identification, I could hit the agree button, or I could just hit A on my keyboard, and that would also agree to the observation. And as you can see, this banner has changed from Needs ID to Research Grade. Next up, if I disagree with an identification, for example, or if I can make an identification more specific. So if I go to Maryland, I can see some observations here. And I can also agree from the outside like this. If I were to find one that I could make more specific, I would add my identification, and that would become the new community taxon. However, it wouldn't be research grade because two more people hadn't agreed on it yet. If I found one where the identification currently I think is wrong, then I could put my ID in and it would go back to the largest taxon that encompasses all of that and go to Needs ID. Okay, next up is the More tab. It just has some guides, places, and site stats and some tutorials, so we're not going to be needing that. Next up is Upload. This is where you will upload your observations. So, for example, if I were to upload this photo of a squirrel, right, I could put in the species name here, as well as edit the date, location, notes, as well as any of these other things like tags, fields, projects, and offset time. And then I would hit submit afterward if I was done with the observations. Okay, next up we got the inbox. This is where people can talk with you and you can talk with other people through iNaturalist. Next up is your notifications. This will have pretty much everything you're going to need to see. So identifications on observations that you've identified, identifications on your observations, comments on your observations. Basically anything you ever need to see on these types of things. Next up, we've got this drop down where you can see your dashboard. You can see all of these tabs that are here in the drop down. Next up is your dashboard, which is where you'll see anything that you've subscribed to, taxa, locations, people, and then anything that comes up on your notifications. Next up is your profile. Your profile has all the normal things that a profile would have, as well as your stats and who you're following, as well as your favorite taxa, which you can set in the lists tab. Next up is observations. So in observations, it just takes you to this your observations tab. Next up, we are going to be going to calendar. This will show you the days that you've submitted observations. The darker the color, the more observations you've submitted that day. Next one, IDs. This is where all your IDs show up. That's pretty much all there is to know about it. Next up is lists. This is where you can set your favorites and see your life list. Next up is journal. Journal is where you can upload stories about your experiences on iNaturalist. I don't really use it very much. Next up is favorites. You can favorite an observation, and then it'll show up in this, under this favorites tab. You can do this for a number of reasons, from just liking the observation to wanting to come back to it for an identification later. And finally, projects. This is where you'll see the projects that you've joined and the projects that you administrate, that you're an admin in. That's pretty much it for my iNat tutorial, so I'll see you next time.